Hello and welcome to Property Matters. I'm Stephen Galpin and welcome to the future of the UK real estate market in 2025. Today I'm diving deep into the ever-evolving UK property market, examining the trends shaping how we buy, sell and live in our homes. From skyrocketing house prices to new ways of thinking about living spaces, the UK property landscape is changing rapidly. What's driving these changes and what does the future hold for homeowners, renters and investors alike? I want also to look at in particular the government's role in influencing the market. So join me as I take a closer look at the state of the UK property market in 2025. From the impact of economic shifts to the latest technological innovations that are transforming real estate, the UK property market has been through quite a roller coaster in recent years. After the economic turbulence brought on by Brexit and the pandemic, the market has shown remarkable resilience. But what's the situation as we step into 2025? To create meaningful comment, we may first define what we mean by the property market. Do we mean investment, commercial, retail, industrial or residential? And if the latter, do we refer to rental purchase, buy-to-let or shared ownership? For the purpose of today's review, I'm going to focus on the residential sectors. 2025 is seeing the culmination of several long-term trends. Despite the cost of living pressures and the economic uncertainty, the housing market has remained competitive, particularly in cities like London, Manchester and Birmingham. The average house price has levelled off, but it's still high relative to incomes. The ongoing trend of limited housing supply, coupled with high demand, has continued to push property prices up in many areas. However, affordability remains a key challenge, with younger buyers especially feeling the pinch. So let's talk about supply. The new Labour government has promised we're going to build 1.5 million new homes by the end of this Parliament. Well, good luck with that. There are material shortages, labour shortages, delays in the planning process, and above all in terms of we're going to build. Who's we? Material shortages alone could play havoc with the European building programmes caused by the inevitable rebuilding of devastated towns and cities and countries affected by the Middle East conflicts and the Russian-Ukraine war. Last year, I spoke with Finbar Dorr, Head of Procurement for House Builders, about potential shortages. What we've also got to think about is whether 1.5 million homes is a practical proposition, both in terms of people skilled enough to build them and the materials, which is Finbar's particular interest here and speciality. Are there going to be enough materials and are they going to be affordable?
Material supply at the moment is probably running, last year we built 180 odd, I think it was about 181,000 units. And you know, the supply chain operated reasonably efficiently around that. Ironically, I think only about 3,500 of those units were modular. So everything else was traditionally or timber frame built. But we still saw through that demand price increases of roughly around 8%. Some of the sort of key materials like concrete, insulation, bricks, etc., ran higher. I think it's you know, basic economics. If you ask a system to provide more, costs go up. If you ask a system to provide less, sometimes costs go down, but not always. You see that in fuel, for example, that hasn't quite dropped back, has it?
Just on the material side of things, at what stage do you get involved talking to the developer, whether that developer be a local authority subcontracting his work out to I presume a contracting firm, or whether it's a house builder that builds direct for his own purpose? At what stage do you get involved with the materials? How much planning goes into this?
If I take how when we talk to our clients, particularly our prospect clients who have yet to experience what we do for them, their approach would be, right, let's get through the planning, let's get approvals, let's understand roughly on a square metre basis what our cost of materials will be, what our cost of build will be, what our cost for the land will be, and we'll allow some contingency, and then more or less keep our fingers crossed that won't move too much. That's kind of the approach.
Even if the realism of the target number can be accepted, what would that 1.5 million homes consist of? Affordable homes, whatever that really means, local authority homes, specifically purposed rental homes, private sector, high or low value homes. I'm afraid the government may be focusing on headline-grabbing numeric ambitions instead of taking solid industry advice on what's needed, where it's needed, and who's going to provide it. In 2025, rising interest rates will have a lasting impact on the mortgage market. As inflation and the Bank of England's monetary policies continue to evolve, many buyers are facing new challenges when securing mortgages. Right now, we're seeing a lot of people locked into higher interest rates, especially those on variable rate mortgages. First-time buyers have been especially affected. Many are now looking for lower deposit schemes, while others are exploring alternative financing models, like shared ownership and government-backed programs. With interest rates higher than in recent years, homeowners who are looking to remortgage are finding that their options may be more expensive, leading some to rethink their plans for moving or upgrading. Listen to what Simon Gammon, managing partner of Knight Frank Finance, thought about interest rates and their effect on homeowners for the future. So I'm going to ask you the $64,000 question. Where do you think interest rates are going to go and where are they going to settle?
Okay. I don't think we'll be back at the extraordinary rates of sort of 0.25%, 0.5%. I hope that, subject to world events, we will continue to see the world settling a little bit from an interest rate point of view, from an inflation point of view. Some of the data that is coming out looks positive. And so I'd like to think that the Bank of England base rate, which is just above 5%, would settle back at around 3.5%. But it could well take a year or two to get there. I don't think we're going to see a dramatic drop. It'll be 0.25% at each rate drop. That will mean that mortgage rates will be comfortably in the 3%.
Okay, so will the mortgage rates religiously follow the bank rate?
Tracker mortgages will, but fixed rates tend to be based upon, most banks will use the swap rate market in order to secure their pricing on their mortgage rates, and that tends to be more forward-looking. So it's not as an exact mirror. If the swap markets think, for example, there's going to be a problem 2 or 3 years from now, or it looks like the long-term data says inflation's going back up, or just by way of an example, then they will start to price that in, and that will have an impact on 3 or 5 year fixed rate mortgages.
Okay.
But if their view of the future is more positive, then that means that you could have mortgage rates back in the 2%, even though the Bank of England base rate is 3.5%.
You know, I go back some years, and I mean, I was always sort of educated to think, if your interest rate was below 10%, you were doing fine. And I think what I've realised or learned over the years, actually, the specific rate doesn't matter. It's the rate differential between when you started and when you finish, isn't it? That really matters.
I think that's right. And also, people are trying to always spot the market, pick the best moment to take their mortgage fixed rate and everything else. My view is, if the rate is affordable to you and it is based on all the information you have at the time, the right deal for you, then that's a good deal. You can't predict the future. This is a world now with so many dramatic changes around the world, so many macro influences that affect the mortgage rate that you pay. It's impossible for you to guess. So if it's affordable, we would recommend you went with it.
Building 1.5 million homes is one thing. Finding buyers with the ability to finance their desired purchase is another. Will local authorities have the finance to either build or buy? Will first-time buyers have the required deposits and earnings criteria to buy rather than rent? Will punitive measures around stamp duty and taxation for overseas investors reduce the overall investment in UK property? Already, taxation and regulation has seen a mass exodus from the buy-to-let investor. Having stock shortages and increasing rental rates, This has been a significant and successful market sector for developers, but seeing a huge decline in 2024. I can't see anything halting this decline in 2025. Andy Wood, tax barrister, gave me his view on likely forthcoming taxation and its effect on the property market. Capital gains tax changes, that could be quite horrendous, couldn't it?
I mean, there's been obviously a lot of talk about potential capital gains tax increases, and I think the danger can be looking at it quite simply. So you see that, the income tax rate up here, particularly when you had NICs on, and the capital gains tax rate down here, and you think that looks like a bit of a open net. But then I think if you look at some of the figures produced by the government, and you look at it and think actually some even rather quite modest rises to the capital gains tax rate become essentially revenue negative. So when you start looking at increasing that, and it's worth just pointing out to that currently the capital gains tax rate, the general rates are top rate is 20%. For residential property in the UK, it's 24%. But if you look at modest increases to that 20% capital gains tax rate, so 5%, that very, very quickly starts losing money for the government. And I think this is why you see when Jeremy Hunt decided to bring the 28% rate down to 24%, he chose that figure of 24%. Now, the government hasn't actually, when it produced its stats, didn't show the difference that 4% made, but 1% raised money, 5% lost it. So you can probably assume that there was some kind of sweet spot.
Does it lose money because of inactivity caused by the rise?
It's because of behavioural change. And again, the figure, you've got to be careful sometimes using government stats, and that sometimes they are static, which means they don't take into account behavioural changes, whereas these figures which have been published, now clearly nobody can 100% predict behaviour, but you can guarantee that if you have a capital gains tax rate of, let's say, 20% on an asset, and then suddenly it goes up to 45%, now that is going to at least influence the decision on whether you sell now or wait 10 years and see what the next government has in mind. It might also think, if you've got a £10 million gain and your capital gains tax bill has increased, you might think, you know what, actually I was going to hang around in the UK, but it's worth my time now to move overseas, so I'll wait until I'm non-resident and sell it, and then you know what, you won't get any of my tax money, Mr. Government. So it's those type of impacts that these figures have tried to incorporate.
I'll deal with the rental market later in the programme, but for now let's look at the regional variation in terms of performance and prices. Not all areas in the UK are feeling the property market pinch equally. Whilst prices in London and the South East are still on the high end, regional areas are seeing new trends emerge. So, how are property buyers and investors navigating these differences? In cities like Liverpool, Leeds and Manchester, we've seen a real shift towards urban regeneration projects, attracting both buyers and investors. These areas offer better value for money compared with the South East, especially when you factor in the potential of capital growth. On the other hand, parts of Scotland, Wales and the Midlands are seeing more people moving to affordable areas to escape the crowded markets down south. There has been significant disappointment expressed by those investors who follow transportation trends when making their investments. The park curtailment of the HS2 project demonstrates this well. The predicted boom areas will now simply not happen. Those train station following investors have had a slightly better experience in the London area with the opening of the Elizabeth line, crossing both over and under London's extremities. However, nothing really to excite the markets. In recent years, technology has started to reshape how we interact with the property market. From virtual property tours to AI-driven pricing models, developers devise ever more high-tech ways of displaying their futuristic designs to potential buyers. These innovations have too helped planners understand the visual aspects of proposed developments. All these are positive and useful factors. Estate agency has seen some amazing rise and falls of fortune for the online agency firms. One falling from £1 billion valuation at its height to a mere £1. Perhaps we just like the way our conventional agencies help us buy and sell our homes, and some were just trying to solve problems with innovative ideas that didn't exist. It does feel like we're heading back to convention in this area, with the exception of the employment status of agents themselves. There has been an explosion in the conversion from employed to self-employed. This new breed of agent, or as they prefer to be called, brokers, may or may not be beneficial to all concerned. Whilst it will encourage enterprise and focus on personal results, one may question whether fully ethical standards will be maintained without the corporate governance provided by the umbrella of a high street firm. Time will tell on this one. David Linley, one of the country's leading experts on estate agency, shared with me his thoughts on agency developments. Nobody wants to call themselves an estate agent anymore. They want to call themselves a broker, don't they? Which I guess we've picked up from America, haven't we? Yeah, okay. And what this broker means, it means somebody who's working on their own as a broker, self-employed, sometimes, in fairness, under the umbrella of a bigger organisation. Now, David, the worry I have about this is there's no control over that person's capability. There's no checking. There's no control or no.
As opposed to.
Well,
I mean, in a high street agency, is there any checks?
When you're working in an agency, if you're working in any company that's worth its own, you will have an office manager, you will have a general manager who will watch what you're doing. They will watch what you're saying. They will watch what you're sending out in letters and emails and having a look. But when somebody's on their own, I'm sure to some people it's a fantastic incentive and a fantastic opportunity.
Yeah.
Wouldn't want to knock that for the world.
Yeah.
But
it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because, a lot of people would look at the industry and say anyone can come from, whatever circumstance, almost roll out of prison one day and be an estate agent another. And it's as simple as that.
They wouldn't have to wait a day.
There's no qualification for it. So the industry is all in the same boat as far as that's concerned. And I think that if people are going to act unscrupulously, they're going to act unscrupulously, regardless of the structure that they're in. I've seen what I will say is that use the word brokerages. In America, obviously, a brokerage is the company umbrella over which they would engage with their realtors, estate agents, there, and they would deal with the legal and the compliance on behalf of the realtors. What happens here when you typically have self-employed agents, as they're called now, is they will work within, we don't really call them brokerages, maybe we should start because it's effectively what they become, but within brands, companies, umbrella organizations, and they'll do a lot of the compliance through them. So it's a funny thing. It's not something that I've ever really encountered. I wouldn't say that members of the public are more or less safe with regards to dealing with an estate agent who might not be of the highest caliber. But I think that's where you need to look at the market as a competitive landscape. So see the agents who are succeeding, who have good reviews, good reputations, good social profiles. You meet with them, trust them, they do what they say they're going to do. It's those kind of things which is going to probably bear fruit more than just trusting a name above the door because it's on a high street somewhere and you hope a general manager's doing something they may or may not be doing.
On the subject of agents, we must address the huge problem of conveyancing times for residential property. Currently, the average time for a conveyance is in excess of 6 months. The question is why? Agents will blame the lawyers. Lawyers will blame the lenders for wanting ever increasing detailed information, and all may be justified to some extent with their opinions. What I do believe is that the agent should take greater responsibility for progressing a sale, and this could be achieved in a number of ways. Those of us who have been in the industry for a significant time know well that taking the reservation and agreeing a deal is the easy part. However, the only thing that really matters is getting the deal to the point of contractual exchange. It's true that searches required by lenders can take weeks, but this could be easily fixed by either a requirement for pre-marketing inquiries or the creation of a central multi-search database, perhaps with the land registry. Funded, of course, by agency or solicitor subscriptions, or in any event, I'm sure it's something AI could easily solve. In today's world, the level of efficiency should not be out of man's reach. Dropout from sales completions is too high, and the subsequent aborting costs unacceptable. Change is needed. However, it's not just the way we buy homes that's changing, it's how we live in them. Smart homes are becoming a standard feature with energy efficient technologies and automated systems. But all of these improve our convenience and security and, of course, sustainability. In terms of buying, AI-powered property platforms are enabling buyers and sellers to make faster and more informed decisions. Home buyers and investors are now placing more emphasis on energy-efficient properties. From solar panels to heat pumps, sustainable design is in demand. There's also a push for developments that feature green spaces and lower carbon footprints. In fact, many developers are now required to meet stricter environmental standards, driving the green revolution in real estate. I was fascinated by the depth in research and indeed achievement by house builders in their green endeavours when I interviewed Head of Innovation at Barratt Homes. Just looking at it, you're putting a lot of time and effort into building model sustainable housing and spending a lot of time, no doubt, experimenting. Tell me some of the things that you're coming across.
I suppose if I took you through the journey that we've been through since the government defined they wanted to get to zero carbon, we've built two concept houses where the best way to explain it is I've put 50 ingredients into the home, 50 technologies, of which I'll only use 10 to 15 to make the perfect cake.
Okay.
That zero carbon home.
Right.
And we are testing those with Salford University, that's our partner. And actually one of those houses is an environmental chamber where I can go from -20 to +40 in 48 hours. So I can look at climate change on top of that. So it's linked to your future.
Yeah.
What does the future, because the future today and how our homes perform, if our temperatures go higher and lower, we have more extremes, we need to know the houses we're thinking of today work then. Now, when we're testing those technologies, we're actually putting customers in there and we're testing them to understand the impact that how they work together, because that's where it usually goes wrong.
Right.
If I'm honest with you. It's not that the individual technologies don't work when they're put in a lab and tested. It's when we get them all onto a site, put them all together and say, do you now work?
Right,
and that's what's so critical about the work we're doing. So it's nearly over a year that we've been working on these houses. And I think you picked up on a really important point. I think like many people, you want to make sure that if you buy a new home, the technologies in there work and you want to know how to make them work. But I think what's important for me is what we're now doing with all this testing and the new houses we're building is we're doing a lot of learning around the technologies and how they get applied. And what's exciting is that many of the trades that are used in our sector actually do work in refurbishment, so they can transfer that knowledge across to refurbishment. It's not a like for like, but you can put an air source heat pump on the refurbed unit. So we've got skirting board now that is actually a radiator.
Yeah.
So you don't have a radiator on the wall, you have skirting, which helps in refurbishment.
Yeah.
Because one of the big things in refurbishment is you'd have to replace your pipes and your radiators.
Yeah.
Because an air source heat pump, the water's colder, so you need more surface area.
Yeah.
We're also looking at infrared. So it's just a more efficient way of using electric heating. Other markets like Holland and Sweden and Austria, they use quite a lot of infrared in their housing. And then probably the last one that's worth mentioning, our new homes, and as the market in refurbishment jumps on that whole sort of solar panel where we're going to produce a lot of electricity, the big challenge is storage and how we work on the grid. Now, that's where I think new build and refurbishment market have a great combined opportunity.
Sustainability is no longer just a buzzword in the property market. As climate concerns rise and energy efficiency becomes a priority, the UK's property market is increasingly focused on green homes. However, a word of caution here. There have been many innovative ideas and schemes for a greener housing ethos as we seek a more climate change friendly world. The last government threatened legislation for insulating rental homes, and after those, realising their properties would never comply, sold their portfolio of rental properties, sometimes at huge losses, only to be told belatedly that the idea had been scrapped. Theoretical bans on gas boilers have seen homeowners simply buy spare boilers to store, thus evading any eventual ban and forced conversion to heat pumps. A trial village had been set up virtually, fully converted to accept hydrogen gas for energy again, only to be cancelled by the government. My view is that many of these well-intentioned ideas need far more research and trial before being forced on relatively uninformed householders. However, many of our house builders are doing their best to encourage eco-friendly design and incorporate tried and tested equipment in their projects. I don't think, however, I can be sure that government is operating with the same diligence or competence. With rising energy costs, homeowners are also looking for ways to lower their bills, and green features are increasingly seen as an investment for the future. As the cost of home ownership rises, the rental market has continued to expand, with more people opting to rent for longer periods. Let's take a look at how the rental market is shaping up for 2025. The rental market is seeing high demand for short-term rentals in urban centres, driven in part by digital nomads and workers moving in and out of cities. However, long-term rental prices are also climbing, particularly in places like London, Brighton and Cambridge. Government policies have seen a mixed bag for renters. Whilst there's been a push for rent controls and more tenant protections, affordability remains an issue for many. Meanwhile, private landlords are adjusting to new regulations, which has created both opportunities and challenges in the rental sector. So, what does the future hold for the UK property market in 2025? From rising interest rates and affordability challenges to new technologies and sustainability, the landscape is evolving. But one thing is clear, whether you're a homeowner, a renter or an investor, navigating this market will require adaptability, knowledge and a keen eye for emerging trends. Keep your finger on the pulse because the property market of tomorrow is being shaped today. Thanks for joining us on this journey through the UK property market in 2025. Stay tuned for more insights and updates on this ever-changing industry. See you next time on Property Matters.